a special day, as I told the children earlier. It's a really big day in the church. It's like Christmas or Easter almost, although there isn't the commercialization around it. Maybe it doesn't get the same attention as Christmas and Easter. But Pentecost is the day that we say, happy birthday to the church. It's the day that we celebrate that God is not just with us, but in us through the Holy Spirit. We heard just now the story of Pentecost. Before Pentecost was the birthday of the church, it was a Jewish harvest festival held 50 days after Passover. And so it was on the day of Pentecost, the only Christian holiday mentioned in the Bible, by the way. It was on the day of Pentecost that the disciples were gathered. They were in a house somewhere. We're not sure if it was just the disciples or a larger crowd, but they were in a house waiting. Who knows what for, what they were doing? Who knows what they were feeling or thinking, but I'm sure they were still in grief and confusion about what to do now that Jesus had gone. But suddenly there was a mighty wind and the flames of fire that came and were among them, but did not burn them, like the burning bush that Moses saw. And they spilled out of the house, it must have been, because suddenly there was a crowd. There were people hearing them speaking all the languages. It's almost as if the wind blew them out of the house like dandelion seeds. The story of Pentecost starts with a small group huddled in a house, but suddenly there was a large crowd speaking each other's languages, and the miracle is not just that they spoke, but that other people understood. They were all speaking many languages, yet everybody heard what they needed to hear. Have you ever learned a foreign language? It's hard. For me, the hardest part was speaking it and being in conversation. Hearing it out of the mouths of native speakers was so hard because it always felt like they were speaking a million miles an hour. And yet, here in this story, the Holy Spirit gives both the power to speak and the power to hear, to listen. It was like a UN meeting, a United Nations meeting, where, everybody has on their headphones and they're all hearing it translated into their own language. I was once at a World Council of Churches meeting in South Korea, and when we had worship in this huge, huge, huge room with people from all over the world, one of the most amazing things is when we would say the Lord's Prayer. Because you knew what everyone was saying, but you were hearing it in so many different languages while you were saying your own. It was incredibly powerful. To speak another's language is to enter into their world. Here, the Spirit is breaking down the divisions between these different groups of people. The Holy Spirit is surprising and amazing, yet it's hard to hold on to. I don't know how often we talk about the Spirit's work in our lives. The crowd said that day, "What does this mean?" And don't we still wonder about the Holy Spirit? Wonder when the Spirit is active in our lives and in the world? It makes sense that we would have some confusion about it and maybe not celebrate the Holy Spirit that often. In the Bible, in the New Revised Standard Version, God is named 4,736 times. Jesus and or Christ add up to 1,563 times, but the Holy Spirit only gets 110 mentions. So no wonder the Holy Spirit is this nebulous thing in our lives. What is the Spirit and what does it do? Why do we celebrate it this day? There's a lot that is unknown about the Spirit. It is one of those mysterious things about our faith. But one thing is clear from the book of Acts and from the Pentecost story. The Spirit of God moves. And if you were to read the whole book of Acts, which I do recommend if you haven't done it before, because it's an amazing account of the early church and of the work of the Holy Spirit. Throughout Acts, starting here in Acts 2, what we see is that the Spirit of God continually pulls the disciples out of their comfort zones into new places, among new people. The Spirit of God is up to something. The Spirit of God goes out. And one of those stories about how the Spirit goes out comes later in Acts 10 and 11, when we, who are Gentiles, become included in the story. Don't know if you noticed, but in Acts 2, the Pentecost story is all about Jews who were following Christ. But later, we are included. We are included in the story because God goes out. The Spirit is fuzzy and nebulous in our lives, but this thing we know, that the Spirit is moving and active, gathering different people, breaking down boundaries. But we don't always want that, do we? Has the Holy Spirit ever messed with your life a little bit? It has mine. It's like doing something that scares you. I was a Girl Scout growing up, and one thing that we would do is ropes courses. Have you ever been at a camp or somewhere where you've seen a high ropes course? It's like all these obstacles, but 20 feet off the ground or more. I'm not good at estimating feet. But you're clipped in, you're safe, but I'm really scared of heights. Now, doing all the obstacles is one thing, you're focused on a task, but the hard part for me that I remember very distinctly was getting down. They wanted you to do a zip line down. You know what a zip line is? It's long, cord, rope, not a rope, but it's made out of steel. It's very safe, but basically you have to jump off a platform and just trust that you will be held and you will zip down safely to the ground. I was terrified to jump off the platform, and I think I resorted to sitting down on the platform and trying to scoot myself off of it. And by the time I actually did it, I held on to my rope connection so hard that my arms were sore. And I didn't need to hold on at all. I could have just let my arms go free. But life is like that sometimes. The Holy Spirit wants us to do things that we don't want to do. Wants us to jump into the unknown, to new places and new people. But we'd rather stay right where we are in the known. Maybe we skirt away from the Spirit in our lives, as one preacher said, because it challenges us. It requires something of us. It's one thing to adore the baby Jesus at Christmas. It's one thing to proclaim the resurrection of Jesus at Easter. But Pentecost says, I got something for you to do. And it might be hard for you. Because that's how the Spirit works sometimes. The Spirit goes out. We want to stay in, safe and comfortable. But the Spirit says, go. We often just say, no thanks. We can't control the Spirit. It doesn't belong to us, which means the Spirit is not just here in church, not just in the places that we're familiar with or comfortable with, but out in the world. Out in places we can't imagine, with people we don't like or understand, moving in ways that will push us off our comfort zone. It's a little bit like Blockbuster in a way, bear with me. Blockbuster was once an institution dedicated to sending movies to people's homes. Blockbuster is almost no more. I think there's one location left. But are people still watching movies at home? Are there still movies? Maybe not physical movies, but streaming and so on? Yes, of course. Someone else has taken up the mantle, other companies, streaming services, and so on and so forth. And now if we were to apply that kind of thinking to the church, to Christianity, we may no longer live in a culture where lots of people go to church or actively follow Jesus. But does that mean that the Spirit is not still active? Of course not. The Spirit is always being the Spirit. God is at work. And God beckons us out, saying, come on, let's go. We don't want to go, we don't like change, but the Spirit is always nudging us forward and outward, because our faith is not meant to just keep us where we are. God sends us. We don't have a set it and forget it faith. We have a faith that moves. We get to follow the Spirit. So let us look for God out in the community. Let's go out and do something new, looking around for the Spirit. Let's go to some new places and meet some new people. You may need to literally go out, or just look around more deeply at the places you already are. For you, this place the Spirit may be sending you may be about learning about something that grabs your heart. Like so many white people learned about racial injustice and white supremacy in the last couple of years. Could be like that. It could be literally meeting new people, going new places. Could be having a conversation you've never had before with someone you love. Maybe it's about doing something new to make the world a better place. Whatever it is for you, the Spirit who calls us out also equips us and gifts us with strength and courage to jump off that platform into the wild adventure of the Spirit. So today on Pentecost, we say happy birthday to the church, but God also says, let's go. Let's jump off the platform and zip into the amazing life of the Spirit.